Welcome to SSI Meetup. Today we have a very special presentation because we have a fellow Spaniard who's joining us today from Alastria. He's the Alastria Digital Identity Commission Leader, and his name is Carlos Pastor. And he will be telling us what Alastria is about and what Alastria has been doing in the last 12 months, trying to develop a Spanish ecosystem. And if we go to the second slide, I can tell you about some of the things we're trying to achieve here at SSI Meetup. First of all, we're trying to empower global SSI communities. This means that we're trying to create content and connect people all across the world to learn about self-sovereign identity, and do it in a really open way where companies, communities, and people that are interested in SSI can participate in this. And the way we're doing this is by sharing content with the Creative Commons by Share Alike license, which basically means that for the presentation we're giving today, for example, anyone who's interested in using this material, the only thing you will have to do in the future is to give credit to Carlos Pastor and Alastria for the presentation and to SSI Meetup, and then he will be able, or she will be able, to use this material wherever in the world. And what we're trying to achieve with this is basically that anyone anywhere can create SSI meetups, and that's why we call it this way, where we use this material and learn it, give presentations at the companies or other meetups to share all this material. So without any further amendments here, please welcome Carlos Pastor. And Carlos, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. And if you have any questions during the presentation that Carlos will be giving, please just share your questions, and I will be bringing them up to Carlos as he makes his presentation. Carlos, the floor is for you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share our view of what SSI identity solution should be. And this meeting is, I think that most of all will share the view of SSI. So the user-centric, easy to use, safe. But there are some other aspects that for Alastria that I will explain later. What is exactly Alastria is to be lawful, so it should be aligned with legality, of course, but also that has effect under the law, the actions that are done using the digital identity from Alastria. That could be the best, probably is the most important difference with the plain SSI model. So Alastria is, first of all, is a consortium made of companies, small companies, big companies, but also ONGs and investigation centers, even some official public administration organisms, and for example, even the Treasury of the Ministry of Economy of Spain. So it's an open consortium, so everybody can enter the consortium. Is free for ONGs and almost free for small companies, startups, and more expensive for medium and big companies. And big companies also fund the organization, the consortium, giving free access, free computers for deploying the architecture. The members collaborating on the infrastructure. That means that the basic infrastructure, that is the blockchain and the identity layer, are worked in a common collaborative model, and the different services that could be provided by one or more companies, or one organism, or one or more investigation centers are in the competition area. So we compete we are going to compete in the services, but the layer is going to be the same, and we are going to collaborate to make it a success. We are not, as an association, we are not very involved on the services that are going to be run on top of that blockchain that is open access, open for access to everybody. but we are going to focus on the bottom layer, that is the collaboration layer. To make the difference with public blockchains, all members of the consortium are identified. So we know who is running all the nodes that are part of the Alastria consortium. Right now, we are running a test blockchain. We're going to have a main blockchain, a production blockchain, probably for the autumn this year. That is also be run. All the nodes of the production and the test environments are going to be run by members. Well, we are not going to spend many times describing SSI. I think that you all knew the basis and we show the ideas that are behind that. We want the user to have complete control over the information, over their personal information, and also over we are trying to give them ways to make very easy to consent, but also to giving the consent to a company. The identity model should be make easy for the user and for the companies to follow all the GDPR rules and that are now enforced in Europe. Well, what are the participants on the model of identity? First of all, is the user. The user is the data owner. Is the one that is going to be going to use his or her data for the purpose that he's willing to do. Who is going to provide the service? Is a service provider that could be in the financial, education, government, corporate, or any other industry that is going to provide services to end users. Usually, when you want to access a service, you need to provide some information about you, mainly who are you, or sometimes just that you have some characteristics. For example, that you are over 20, or you are over 25, or you are a student, or you have the right to drive a car. Imagine, for example, that you are going to rent a car. For renting a car, you need to provide probably a demonstration, the fact that you are the holder of a credit card, that you are able to drive, and perhaps your postal address. This information, you can provide that information saying that this is your driving license number and so. But if you provide information that is backed by an attester, somebody that the service provider knows and can confidence on. For example, in Spain, the organization that is issuing driving licenses, or for example, you have a sign attestation of your bank saying that this is your credit card and you have a limit for enough limit to charge. Probably they don't need charge in advance or they don't have to take more money that is requested for renting the car. So first of all, before having this information signed by the attester, the user has to collect that information. The information then is sent from the attester to the user. The user holds that information in a private repository of information in a wallet. The information in the slide is simple as a green square. Could be provided by any company or organism that is part of Alastria, and is marked with a level of assurance to give an idea of the confidence that the issuer of the attestation has, and so the confidence that the service provider can have on that attestation. Is the user who holds all the information in a private repository, in a wallet that probably is stored in the mobile phone, or could be stored in the cloud, in any repository that fills the specification. And when the service provider asks for some information to the user, the application on the mobile phone makes a pre-selection of that of the attributes of the data, the personal data that fills the request from the service provider. So it will select the driving license in that case, and if I have several cars, one of them. But the user is always in charge and can change that previous selection. Usually, the user will accept the proposal from the application, but it's up to him or her to accept that preselection or change that and select another attribute that is that could fill the request from the service provider.
Carlos, excuse me, I just have a question here from a person, and he's saying, how do you prove you're really you? By trusting the attester, he's saying.
Could you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah, he's saying, how do you prove you are really you? By trusting the attester?
Well, at the beginning, when you are going to you collect the attributes, at the very beginning, you have to probably to use your current identification means. So the user and password for the first time before using Alastria identity to prove that that you are you in front of, for example, your bank. Then once you have make the first login with the Alastria identity plus your user and password, the user and the Alastria ID are connected in the bank, so you can prove to the bank forever that you are you using Alastria ID. Alastria ID is really, well, we are going to go in the details of what an Alastria ID is later, but using your Alastria ID, you can prove that you are you to your bank or to any one of the attester, and then to the service provider. If one of these attestation, for example, is your name or your identity card, that is in Spain is the common way to identify yourself, you can show that information to any service provider that will accept that information that comes from the government. Okay. So if you don't have any previous relationship with a service provider, you can prove that you are you using an attestation from the tester. And if the service provider knows the tester, could have confidence on that attestation if the level of assurance is enough. For example, a level of assurance of 2 means that the attester is obliged to identify you with personal presence. For example, a bank. Banks are obliged to, the first time that enroll you, to have a physical, personal, direct checking of your personality using the identity card and your physical presence. Okay, that answered the question?
I think so, yeah. Juan, he just said, thank you. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, we will go in deep of that process at the very end of the presentation. Okay, well, in the previous slide, with that description of the process, really the Alastria identity is not at all related to the blockchain, and it really is. what Alastria ecosystem provides is exactly the where all the digital evidences of that process are recorded. The personal information is never written to the blockchain, but the hash of that information is written. For example, with when the tester provides an attestation to the user can record the hash of that attestation in the blockchain. Well, it's the mobile the app that is going to do that for the user, but using the private key that is held in the mobile phone of the user. We will, on the next slide, we are going to understand that better. The user that is in the middle has a wallet where he stores the attestation that are provided by the testers, and also the claims that are provided to the service providers. A claim is basically a combination of a number of attestation, but in the claim is also included some extra information. The extra information is mainly the initial data and end date of the validity of the claim. So when the time reaches the end date, the service provider are obliged to delete that information. In any case, except when the law obliges them to keep for a period of time. And the claim is also records the purpose of that claim. For example, in the case of renting a car, it has a field. The claim has a field that records that this information is provided to rent a car. So it could not be used for any other thing by the service provider. All the information is kept. In principle, you can consider that it's in the mobile phone, but the repository, the real repository, could be an enclosed facility, or could be a simple Dropbox, or could be IPFS, or could be a service provided by some of the members of Alastria. The personal information is divided into different parts. In the real storage is the personal ID, the personal information, where the information is stored encrypted. And in the blockchain is only recorded the hashes, the physical evidence, the digital evidences, the hashes of the personal data. The personal data, that is the attestation, the claims, and also the public and private keys, whose hashes are also stored in the blockchain in order to be checked by the users. You have to take into account that the attestation in that slide are signed by the attester, and the claims are signed by the user to the service provider. Well, this is the general overview of the model, and then we are going to enter in the detailed view of the model. If you have any question about the general idea, we can answer that now. If not, we can enter in the details.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think we can just continue with this.
Okay, we go for the description then. Well, we have here the same roles than in the previous slides. The attestation issuer, the service provider, and on top the subject. The subject, that is the user that is managing his personal information and is storing in a safe repository the attestation, the claims, and the private. Well, the private and public key never. Well, the private key never leaves the mobile phone where it's initially generated, and in the process of creation of the identity. So in that slide, we can see that the blockchain, that is the gray is triangle in the middle, is store the hashes of the information, and all the other steps happens outside outside the blockchain, off chain. An attestation is basically a piece of information that shows who am I, how am I, so a characteristic of myself, or what can I do. I can drive a car, or I can enter I don't know, a specific golf club, or I can do whatever. When the attestation is first sent from the issuer to the subject in parallel, the subject and the attestation can register that attestation on the blockchain. And after that, at any time, the user can mark that attestation as to be deleted, and at the same time, for example, a number of a credit card, or the number of a bank account. If I don't want, if I, as the subject, as Alice, I don't want that account to be used anymore by any of the service provider that I bring that information as part of claims, I just mark that attestation about the credit card on the blockchain. The service provider receive an event, and they have to delete that information following the GDPR rules. The advantage of that is that I can mark in a single place in the blockchain, that this information should be deleted by all the service providers that have a copy of that information. I don't have to check on the web of all of them if I have to send a letter, or I have to send a fax, or I have to go to a specific place to ask them to delete the information. So in a single action from my mobile phone, with the app of my mobile phone, I can mark that information as not being that cannot be used anymore by any of the service providers. But at the same time, the attestation, the issuer has the right to borrow that information. For example, if I close an account of, I just, for example, I do some strange thing with my credit card, and the attestation, the bank wants to mark that account as that information about the account as revoked. The attestation issuer can mark the same attestation as revoked. Well, that is part of the requirement that we have, because we want this functionality to be done using the blockchain, because then we have our registry of what happened, and there is no need to make a official claim or an official communication to the service provider or to anybody that I want to delete my information, or the attestation issuer wants to revoke the information. Marking that on the blockchain, that information is accessible to all the service provider, and they are going to sign an agreement that says that marking that information as deleted by the user or revoked by the attestation issuer is enough for them to recognize that they have been informed of that. So we have the blockchain as a way to inform them people and to make that information self-evident and not that cannot be to avoid any argument, argument about the communication of that deletion or revocation. And this could be done, but we have a problem. If the issuer revokes an attestation and the subject marks the same attestation as deleted, that could happen. the relationship between the subject and the issuer is going to be evident on the blockchain. So we have deployed a mechanism to avoid that this information is evident to any third part that has not a copy of the attestation.
Carlos, just one question. I mean, Juan already made it like a couple of minutes ago, but just to double check, I think you said it already. The claims are stored on-chain or off-chain? I understood that they're stored off-chain, right?
The attestation is stored off-chain, but the hashes are stored on-chain.
Okay.
Okay. Then the problem is that if we were using the same hash for the issuer and for the subject, the relationship between the attestation issuer and the subject is going to be evident on the blockchain. It's going to be recorded. So what we have devised is a mechanism that we use two different hashes to record that information. One of the hashes is going to be used by the subject. We call this the attestation hash, and the other is going to be used by the issuer, that is going that we call the revocation hash. So they both write in the registry, in the that is the smart contract that records all that information, but under different hashes. And you can ask how you can use two different hashes from the same information. Well, this is we are going to that explanation in a couple of minutes. Well, first of that, sorry, yeah, sorry. Well, we are using several smart contracts to represent the user and to record information. Any user is represented on the blockchain by a proxy contract. This is a very simple contract. The idea, we'll borrow that idea from Uport. We are sharing that our approach with them, and they are happy that we are using the general schema of Uport, even if we have modified very much the details of the schema. But we are using the same three contracts that they use: the meta-identity manager, the proxy, and the registry. But the difference is that we are using the registry in a very different way. In fact, in the last version of the last project that they are doing in SU in Switzerland, they are just using the registry to store the public keys, and we want to use the registry to make this revocation and deletion features available for the user and the attestation issuer. So we use the proxy to represent forever the user and the companies, the members of Alastria. So a person is linked to a proxy from the beginning, and he can keep that proxy as long as he wants. And the relationship between the private and public keys and the proxy is done by the meta-identity manager. So the meta-identity manager links the keys that are held in the mobile phone to the proxy, and the private key in particular is the only one that can control the proxy. And the proxy is used to record anything on the registry. The proxy of the user, or the proxy of the attestation issuer, or the proxy of the service provider are used to record anything that is related to the identity in the registry, the identity registry contract, and this is the general idea of the same schema as Uport has designed and is using right now.
And Carlos, I have one more question coming here from Brad. Yeah. He's asking, how does this compare to Sovereign? I mean, like the the model you're defining in comparison to sovereign. I don't know if you will cover this later or if you want to cover this right now.
How that is compared to SSI in general?
No, to sovereign, the platform, like SOVRIN, sovereign.
Yeah, sovereign platform. Yeah. Well, it's very similar. It's very similar. We have discussed with them, and the general idea is very similar. Probably the way that we are using that information, we add a couple of things. One of them is the level of assurance. That is a way to have a fast check if that information is good enough for the service provider. In particular, we have shared that info approach with Sovereign, and they like the approach, and we are, and they, as far as we know, they are considering to use that idea also in Sovereign. And the the other idea is that in general, all the identities in Alastria are linked to a real physical person. They cannot be just make those type of identity that are just for social networks or things like that. We want to focus on the needs of user needs that are more related to do real transactions with public organization, with companies, and with that have an economic impact, and so you need to prove your identity, or you need to really prove some of your abilities, to your capabilities to do things. So the approach in general is similar. And the other, the probably another different is the consortium that is providing that the backend, the blockchain infrastructure is run by directly run. All the nodes are run by members of the consortium. Those could be the main differences between them and us. In fact, we are happy to collaborate with them, and once we have the first version of our approach, we are going to try to working with them.
Yeah, I mean, Brett is also asking, will claims be compatible with sovereign, or is that still open-ended?
Well, this is an open thing. In fact, we are going to focus now on what an attestation and a claim is. We make the difference between the attestation and claim because we want the attestation to be very simple. In general, a single thing about a person. For example, I don't know, I can have an attestation about a credit card, an account, or that saying just that I'm a student, but not saying what I am a student at that moment, because sometimes you just want to show that you are, for example, over 80 or over 25, without saying your real age to the service provider. Because, for example, renting a car, at least in Spain, if you show that you are over 25, you have a cheaper price. But you don't need to show that you are 40 or 30 or the date of birth. You just need to show to demonstrate that you are over 25. Okay. So they are very simple. They are with initial validity and end validity. They've got a level of assurance that is related to the attestation, not just to the issuer, because, for example, a bank can attest that my account is that number for sure, but they don't really know if my postal address is that, because they just send letters. But I can give I don't know, the postal address of my job, or of a friend, or an old one that I keep picking the letters, but I don't really I'm not living there. So for example, for that postal address could be the level could be 1, or for the credit card could be 2 or 3, or even 3. And that information is signed by the issuer of the attestation. A claim is a number of attestation that are required for a given purpose. This is very a very important piece of information. So the purpose is included in the is recorded in the claim. This is important because you are giving the service providing the permission to use that information for that exact purpose and not for any other purpose. And then there is an initial claim date and end claim date that, of course, must be current with the information that is recorded on the attestations, but could be less. For example, for renting a car, probably I can give that permission, that claim to the service provider just for the period of renting the car, a month, a week, or whatever. And this information is signed by the issuer of the claim, that is the subject. And another important thing about the attestation and claims is that we are not going to adhere to any specific standard about how to name the information that is included there. For example, address locality, address region, or name, or whatever. There are several different standards that try to standardize about the names of the attributes of a person. Mainly, we are considering two: the schema.org and the X520. But we don't want to link our technology to one of them, so we include the name of the schema in the header of the attestation and claim. The physical.
Just one more question, Carlos.
Yeah.
I have a question here from Juan, who's asking me, just 1 second. How do you prove you're over 18 without disclosing your age? Is that process done by the attester that keeps your private information private, basically?
Yeah. The attester, for example, the ministry that is issuing your identity card knows that you are over 25, for example, and can attest your date of birth in one attestation and that you are over 25 in another different attestation. So you can disclose the information that is required for the given purpose for renting a car, for example.
Perfect.
Okay. So it is not something that is calculated by the application. It's something that is attested by the attester. Okay. So we can adapt our technology to any schema. The physical, we are still working on the physical definition of that attestation. Probably is going to be very similar to a DID document. We are just fine-tuning that definition, physical definition, and how to. But we want to be as close as possible to the DID standard. Well, the DID document standard. Okay, because we think that is probably the standard that better fits our needs. In any case, we want to be flexible on that area too. Probably we are going to the MVP will be done with that standard, or at least as close as possible. And if we find any misfit between our requirements and the DID standard, we are going to try to adapt or ask them to hold our special requirements if there is some. In particular, they don't make the distinction between attestation and claim, and we want to mark the difference between one of the other, because really are different things. Well, going back to the needs of revocation and deletion of the information, and we want the subject to be able to register and to mark as deleted in the registry the attestation, but we want the issuer to be able to revoke that in that attestation. But we don't want any third party to be able to realize that there is a relationship between the issuer and the subject. Probably it's not very important if the issuer of the attestation is I don't know, a bank. Well, I don't want the provider to know which is or anybody but my providers to know, because I have to pay with a credit card that they know that is from a bank. But I don't want everybody to know which is the bank that I work in for. But if the provider of the attestation is, I don't know, anything that is related to political or to my habits, I don't want everybody to know about my relationship to my attestation issuers. Well, there are many cases where I want this information to be kept private. So, as I explained before, we are going to use two different hashes, the attestation and revocation hashes, and the relationship between those both hashes could only be done by the issuer of the attestation, the subject, and the service provider that have received the attestation. So only the ones, the organisms, the entities that have access to the attestation can calculate and guess the attestation hash and the revocation hash. And the solution that we have found to make to fulfill all those requirements is to use the attestation hash as the simple hash of all the attestation, including the signature. The signature is important because it makes almost impossible to attack with brute force, with collision attacks, because the information that is included in the attestation, well, in some circumstances, for example, if it is my name or a simple data, even if there is a couple of days inside, could be guessed because probably the initial validity date is very close to the time of issuance of the attestation, and probably the end validity date is a year, 2 years, something like that. So they could be guessed. So we include the issuer signature in order to be impossible to guess the information that is used to calculate the hash. And to have a second revocation hash, we include for a second time, so we include twice the user signature, including again the same information twice in a way that makes the calculation of the attestation hash and the revocation hash very easy to anybody that has access to the attestation, but impossible to anybody that don't have don't have access to that information. In that way, we can have the functionality that the user can talk about, make any change on the state of the attestation using this attestation hash, and the issuer at the same time can mark the attestation as revoked or more or different states about the attestation. So we can allow the service provider to have to reach the information that is recorded in the registry by the subject and by the attestation without displaying, without making evident the relationship that exists between the subject and the attestation issuer to anybody that has not received the attestation. For those receiving the attestation, it's clear that they know the relationship between, because it's included the signature of the tester. So we have found that that mechanism to ensure that the state of the attestation is kept in the blockchain without this closing the relationship between the players of the different roles of the managing the attestation. This is more or less the way that the information is shared. In the complete model, there are many other things between the attestation and claims. There are other actions that could be done. I will go back to one of the slides to make a short list of the actions that could be done regarding an identity. First, starting from the beginning, the first thing that has to be done is the ID generation, Alastria ID generation. Then the simple use of that identity is the authentication. The single sign-on on all the members of Alastria. Anybody that is participating in the solution can provide a single sign-on to the users that have been previously identified, authenticated by any of the service providers. The management of the public keys, the compilation, the management of the attestation by the user, the presentation of claims from the user to the service provider, sharing that information, registering that information, confirming that information, that claim from the service provider, and erasure of that information of the attestation of claims. And then we have provided also a mechanism to backup and recovery of the private keys. That's probably the rationale behind that is that in some public blockchain like Bitcoin, if you lose your private key, you are losing everything. We don't want that if a user loses, for example, the mobile phone where the private key is stored, to lose all the control over all the attestation and claims. Of course, the user can recover all the attestation from the attested that have given him the attestation at the beginning. But if we can provide a mechanism to recover that in case of losing for example, the mobile, we think that is a very useful feature for the user. So the mechanism that is going to be implemented is splitting the private key in many pieces. For example, I don't know, 8 or 10 or something like that. All the each piece, each part of the private key is going to be sent to a selected member.
Carlos, I'm losing you right now.
Okay, sorry. Then the user selects. Okay, the user selects. See, I was a little apart from the computer. The user selects the members that he wants the members that are going to store a part of the key. So if selected, for example, selects up to 10 members or 5 members, 6 members, the number that he thinks that is safe, and each part of the private key is sent to one of those members and store encrypted by the user personal password. So if the user loses the mobile phone, he can address to the providers of that service and ask identify and using a traditional way, using our password or going to the bank or whatever, and recovering that part of the private key. Once the user has recovered enough parts of that private keys, because we are going to use the Shamir secret sharing that allows to recover the complete information. For example, if you split the information in 10 parts, you can recover the complete information with just, for example, 8 parts. It could be configured. So once the user has, using the application again, the app, the mobile app, a new version of a freshly installed mobile app in a new device, can recover all this information, all the pieces of the private key, and then recover all the information, all the attestation and claims that has been stored in an external repository. So it's a way, it's optional for the user, of course. We don't want the user to force the user to use that mechanism, but the user can select to use that mechanism that will allow to recover the private keys in case of losing the phone, for example. At the same time, the user is able to manage the keys, and for example, he can decide to using directly the identity manager to change the private and public keys, for example, once a month or once a year, just to ensure that there is not enough information that is signed with the private key, especially in order to make any type of attack.
Carlos, one question here from Juan. He's asking, can you explain what the purpose is of the proxy contracts?
Yeah, well, the proxy contract, when the identity is first created, a new proxy contract is created for that user, and the meta-identity manager makes sure that that is the contract. The meta-identity manager creates the proxy contract for the user and links the keys to the proxy contract. And the proxy contract is the one that really writes on the registry. And when we use the address of the proxy contract as the Alastria ID of the user and the Alastria ID of the issuers, issuers and the service providers. This is pretty similar to the way that UPort uses the same schema of the 3 different contracts: the meta-identity or identity manager, the proxy contract, and the registry contract. So this stuff is very well explained in the documentation, the UPort documentation, and we are following exactly the same approach, with the difference that we record the information in a different way, because they use the information from the service provider, the attestation, and the user in the same information structure, in the same mapping. We use different mappings, and we never make any. We always ensure that there is no relationship between the proxy of the attestation issuer and the proxy of the subject, in order to make sure that we get the maximum privacy to the subject. Okay, if we go to Alastria generation, one of the steps of this process that is pretty complex is creating a proxy and writing the hash of the public key of the user in the registry in order to be that it could be checked by the attestation issuers and the service provider to show that you are you. You want to go into the detail of that process well, this is a simplified version. In the you want to go into the details of that process, it is published in the Alastria Identity GitHub that is available, is public, so you can go into the details. But mainly, I will follow more or less the sequence of actions that are done. First of all, the user gets the Alastria app on his mobile phone and creates a pair of keys. Then probably using a different using the computer, if this is the mobile phone, is okay and simplifies the process. But we have designed the process that could be done using a computer and a mobile, or using a simple mobile as they want. So the second step will be to log in a service provider that you already have an account and is member of Alastria. You, for the first time, you log using your user and password and selecting that you want to create the Alastria ID. Then a typical OAuth session is established. The information that we call the Alastria token is sent to the mobile phone. User a QR or using a push if the mobile phone is already configured in the service provider. If it is your bank or your insurance company or your gas company or anyone providing a service, probably they have your mobile phone. So instead of using a QR, that is the typical solution, we can use a push that is easier for the user. Then the information of the identity of the service provider is checked on the blockchain. Sorry, I moved to another slide. Then in the third step, in the third step, Alastria, the application, Alastria app makes a transaction that is sent from the subject for this new. The subject is this step is represented by the private public key. Is a external owned account in terms of Ethereum, and this transaction is sent to a gateway. I will explain why a gateway is required at this step. So the gateway sends that information to the blockchain, in particular to the identity manager that creates a proxy and registry and records this relationship between the public key and the proxy on a mapping that is stored inside the identity manager, and also records the hash of the public key of the user in the registry. Then the Alastria ID, the address of the proxy, that is the Alastria ID, is sent to the mobile and also to the service provider. At that step, the service provider links the initial user attribute to this Alastria provider, Alastria ID. So the next time that the user tries to enter the web of the service provider, can just use the Alastria ID without any further need of the user. So this part is the user, and sorry, the service provider, and the gateway is needed because Alastria ID is a permission network, so the mobile phone does not have direct access to the blockchain. In terms of giving access, it's very similar to Infura. That is a mechanism to give access to a blockchain for from a mobile without the need to have a light blockchain node inside the mobile phone. And avoids exposing the complete API of the blockchain node to the internet. That is not it's not a very sensible approach. So the gateway really exposes a very limited RPC API to the app of the mobile. Mainly the functions to create identity, to register, to access to the registry, and to send route transactions, and to make a query on the blockchain are the main functions of the Alastria. It has also some security features, security features like when there is an authentication, checking the auth session of the user. In that slide is the Alastria ID generation. The Alastria ID authentication or attestation claim presentation is very similar. I don't think so that is worth going to the details of that information, of that process. Probably the most important thing is that there is a double authentication. It's not just the user is authenticated by the service provider, but also the service provider. Also the user is able to check the identity of the service provider. That will make more difficult any phishing attacks. And this is mainly the Alastria identity approach. There is more detailed information on the GitHub. You can have access to that information in the wiki of the Alastria identity blockchain. GitHub are links to all the information that is publicly available about the Alastria ID model that is mainly that presentation and the rationale behind this design, and there are some timelines for all the actions that I showed to you in the slide of primitive actions on the Alastria ID, and there are also the implementation of those smart contracts that is available there for you. All the information that is all the information and programs and everything that is being implemented by Alastria is going to be made public for everybody to use, and we are happy that you read that information and make comments and even participate on the implementation of all the pieces that are part of the model.
Okay. Maybe if you go to the last slide, because that's just the final slide, Carlos.
The last one?
And yeah, the last one. And I don't know if there are any questions from anyone in the group. I have 2 questions left before, if anyone wants to ask, then please do so. But if not, I'm just going to ask, because you didn't mention it, that what about the platform? Because I mean, is it correct, the way I'm understanding it, that a lot of the design is inspired by Uport, and that you've made a number of changes, like the registry, for example. Or what are you planning? Because I remember the initial plan was to use Quorum. Then I've been hearing report? Is it still open-ended about what kind of platform will be used?
You mean the blockchain platform or the identity platform?
The blockchain platform.
The blockchain platform now is Quorum. We are using Quorum and using Byzantine algorithm for doing the synchronization of the nodes. And because we don't want to use any proof of work solution, because I think that in our environment that where all the nodes are identified and have signed a contract, an agreement as being part of Alastria consortium, there is no need for that type of algorithms. We prefer to use a Byzantine one that allows higher throughput with very simple, with very common computers. We are mining block per second, more or less, and we have well, during the implementation and testing phases, we have discovered a number of problems in the Quorum implementation of the privacy, and we have working with them to solve some of them, and they have been included in the Quorum public solution. And this is talking about the blockchain platform and the identity solution is inspired by UPort implementation. Well, they completely agree that we use that as the very beginning, as the base of our implementation, their solution. But really, well, the proxy is very similar. The registry is completely different, and the identity manager is a simplified version of the identity that the manager that they are going to use. Mainly because we are going a different approach for gas, and in Alastria does not exist any cryptocurrency, and the cost of the transaction will be based on the cost of the mining process, mainly running the nodes.
Got you.
So we expect the price to be very, very low for the users.
Low and stable, I assume. Yeah.
Low and stable, yeah.
Yeah.
It's as important to be low as to be stable.
Yeah. Another question that I have, I mean, this is something that a lot of people bring up as part of the challenges they see in hybrid blockchains or public permission blockchains, as you're describing right now, which is the subject of censorship resistance, right? Because I mean, a lot of people criticize censorship resistance in a public permission blockchain because they say, well, if you have these nodes distributed all across the globe, there's certain governments that can restrict those nodes or can influence how those nodes are performing or how they're deployed. But if some people criticize, and I just would like to see what your thinking is with that, if we take a consortium like Alastria, where all the nodes, or I think at least for the time being, all the nodes will be based on Spanish territory, the level of influence that any government in the future or today will have on how those nodes will be performing and what kind of level of transparency will be given, not only to the nodes, also to the corporations and the companies and also to the governments or any authorities, will be very, very high. There will be very high level of influence and about how that data can be managed. I mean, what is your answer to those concerns when they bring up these concerns, or what is your thinking there?
Well, it's a difficult question. The idea of Alastria, not just related to identity, but to Alastria as a consortium, is to ensure that we want that the transactions that occur on Alastria blockchain are legally binding to the parts that are part of the transaction. Usually a couple of companies, 2 companies, or a person and a company. So we want at least at the beginning we want to have a common legal environment. So that means that at the beginning we are going to focus on Spain and then in Europe, because there is a common framework for about with EIDAS and regulation and GDPR and most things related to the digital identity and digital transactions and so are common.
I'm losing you again. Just get closer to the PC. Yeah.
Sorry. In fact, we are also working on extending Alastria, or having a good relationship with Alastria, similar consortiums in Latin America. And probably we are going to focus, at least at the beginning, that is well, a really difficult project in Europe and Latin America. Of course, having all the nodes inside the Europe means that they can, well, the government can have more influence over the regulation. But as the focus of Alastria is that the transactions that occur on Alastria are legally binding. Well, we are going to be bound in any way to this legal framework. So we understand that for other types of blockchain, as most cryptocurrency-oriented blockchains, probably having a global deployment is better, but probably it's not our case.
Okay. Thank you. Awesome. If there are no other questions from anyone, I think Carlos, thank you very much for your time. It was a really good, insightful presentation. And I hope we can do this in the future again, because I think there will be a lot of changes coming in the future as you make progress in the testing and deployment of all these things. When do you think you will be running the first? When are you hoping that you will be able to do the first production use cases or test cases with the identity solution?
Well, this case is related to the identity. We hope that we can have all the gateway and the smart contracts deployed probably in September. But it is not a process. It is not a promise. It's just our current plans that could change very much depending on people ability to work on Alastria. We're working mostly on volunteering people that is providing part of their time working on Alastria, and some companies are also contributing with people, allowing people to work on that stuff. As the case of myself and my company, probably I'm devoting more than half of my time to Alastria. So other companies are also working, providing people, helping in that process. But it's very difficult to make any time predictions, because well, depends very much on the availability of time from the people that is working on that project.
Excellent. Well, we will all keep a close eye on the evolution. This is really interesting. Thank you very much, Carlos. Just for everyone to know, next week, Monday, we will have a session with Drummond Reed from Evanen about decentralized key management systems, which is called DKMS, which is, I mean, a part of what Carlos was describing right now. about how key recovery process, and we will be having a full session about key recovery processes, because that's a key element that when you're using with when you're working with cryptography, because people tend to lose their keys, and when you lose your identity, that's a big issue. And and then on Wednesday that same week, we will also be talking with Drum and Read about verifiable credentials, which is one of the elements of the stack for SSI identity that is being worked on by the W3C consortium. And yeah, this is the stuff that's coming up next week. For today, thank you very much, Carlos, for your time. For anyone who's interested in learning more about SSI Meetup and everything we're doing, and you can sign up to the newsletter on our website, which is where we inform you about everything. We also have a Telegram channel where we inform you about everything that will be happening in SSI Meetup, and all the other channels, the usual channels like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So please join us there if you're interested in learning more. And Carlos, thank you very much for sharing your time with us and your knowledge and your insights. And in a couple of months, I will catch up with you. I mean, I'll talk with you anyway before that, but I really think it would be good to catch up again in 3-6 months to see how things have evolved.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our view.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We just had a thank you message from Albi. So Albi, thank you very much for joining us today, and Carlos, have a very good night. We're in the evening here in the European time zone, and Carlos, I'll talk to you soon. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.